Oh, we're sitting over here?
I think so.
Okay. So I put Paula and I next to one another, but there's 2 seats between me and Carol, so find your nameplate and pick a seat.
Okay.
Susan, did you check the video? Everything's good there? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. This is a regular session, although it's not a normal day for us. It is, anyway, Monday, December 20th. The time is 7 p.m. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join us. Thank you. Now I'd like to say our land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind everybody that we're all wearing masks, so it's going to be a little harder for people at home to hear us and in the audience, of course. So please speak directly into the microphone tonight and make sure your mask is up around your mouth and nose. If anybody needs a mask who attends, there are some outside in the foyer. All right, will the clerk please take the roll?
Council President Collins?
Here.
Council Vice President McEntee?
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner?
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso?
Here.
Councilwoman Rose?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. All right, tonight begins our budget process for the town. So we're meeting with the school committee tonight to sort of look at our first sort of pro forma school budget side and the initial budget from the town side as well. With that in mind, we'll begin with item 3A here, the presentation of the FY 2022-2023 municipal pro forma budget. Terry, take it away when you're ready.
Good evening. Before we get started, just as a reminder, the town charter, section 4221, details out the intent of the initial budget hearing to discuss goals and objectives. Essentially, it's a public hearing for the purpose of discussing and soliciting comments from the electors relating to the general goals and objectives of the budget for the ensuing year. It is recognized that a proposed budget will not be completed at this time. The purpose of the hearing is to receive public input regarding the budget prior to the presentation of a proposed budget. It goes on to say that such matters as any increase in taxes, proposed new projects, contractual obligations, and other items affecting the budget should be discussed. The school committee shall attend this meeting and participate in the hearing. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Tonight's objectives, we will provide some context for the upcoming FY 22-23 budget, and we will also go over some of the general principles of municipal budgeting, along with the budget factors and economic indicators that will help drive the discussion, which will follow between the council and the members of the school committee, particularly goals and objectives. Just also a reminder, the town has a budget schedule and process that we go through annually, and this is the first meeting of the budget process. You will see that we have it detailed out here. Numerous public hearings, ample opportunity for the public to provide input, and for the council and school committee to also prepare and present, or to hear the budgets prepared by the respective departments. Also a reminder that the first week of January, we start with our capital improvement program work sessions on January 5th and January 6th. Very briefly, I'll just run through the budget process and the responsibilities. The town council and the school committee both play important roles in the budget process. It's the school committee's responsibility to develop a budget that supports the town's education program, and the town council is responsible for enacting the comprehensive town budget and has line item authority over all departmental budgets except the school program. You'll notice that the town manager also submits the proposed comprehensive municipal budget to the town council. And of course, the voters, per the town charter, Article 4, Section 4222F, have the right to veto the budget by calling for and passing a referendum to do so. We'll start with the municipal budget. Essentially, it is a plan of operations for all of the town activities. Each department will prepare and present a budget to the town manager, and the town manager compiles that budget to be presented to the town council. This includes all public services, including schools, the police station, the senior center, all of the public departments that the town operates. Some of the terms associated with the budget, we'll go through those so that everyone has a general idea of what we're talking about as we move through the presentation this evening and through the budget process over the next couple of months. First, the operating budget. Essentially, it's what we pay for. All of the programs that the town offers, from town hall, general governmental programs, along with public safety, public services, fire alarm, just about everything that the town offers, including the school programs and facilities. And of course, how we pay for it, primarily that's through property tax support, among other revenues that come in through the town, such as the fair share development fees, school housing aid, real estate conveyance fees, other general revenues from recreation department programs, grants, rents, sale of assets, and general obligation bonds. The capital improvement program has three separate components. First, capital projects, just to define that, those are major tangible fixed assets for the town, which cost generally in excess of $10,000 and at least a useful life of 10 years. Equipment for the public services department, or buildings, or projects in the parks, or wastewater, those types of major infrastructure. The capital budget is the first year of the 6-year long-term capital improvement program, and that first year of the program is incorporated into the annual operating budget. And then finally, the capital improvement program is our long-term multi-year plan for looking out and preparing and strategizing for infrastructure, necessary infrastructure and equipment improvements over the next several years. Property tax maximum levy. By law, any city or town may only levy a tax up to 4% in excess of the previous year's tax. That's a legal limit on how much the property tax levy can be collected or increased. It's a statutory limit, and we're all reminded that the goal is not to reach the 4% limit, but it's to be reminded that within that 4% is where the operating budget must stay year to year. This is just a recap of that. And as a reminder, the 4% cap is not a legal limit on the property tax transfers made to the school department. It's for the entire budget. And the cap applies to the tax levy, and that's not to individual property taxes. Maintenance of effort requires municipalities to fund schools at least at the rate that they were funded the previous year. And there are two ways to meet the maintenance of effort: either maintain the level of support as is, or base the funding on a per pupil cost at the same rate as the previous year. So as we move into setting goals and objectives for the FY 22-23 budget, the Town Council has set goals and objectives in 2021, and they are reflected also in the 21-22 budget. There are 12 areas of focus, and within those areas, the Council has further identified objectives that they'd like to see accomplished over the 2-year term. Each departmental budget should reflect objectives that fall within a focus area established by the Town Council. The goals and objectives are always detailed in the annual operating budget, and looking at the detail of departmental budgets, you can see that every goal and objective within each department's budget is associated with one of the focus areas of the Town Council goals and objectives. And you'll notice some broad areas. There's a dozen of them, from budget and fiscal management, communication and education, right down through URI and the South County Hospital. Just as a reminder, when departments are doing their budgets, they will look at objectives, and we do remind every department that objectives have to be specific and measurable, attainable, realistic, and timed. So you'll notice in previous budget narratives that there's detail regarding those goals and objectives attached to every departmental budget. And as we move on to some of the context and considerations for FY 22-23, we'll start with the Rhode Island Economic Outlook, and I'd like to thank our Finance Director, Zach Saul, for compiling this information so that we have some type of frame of reference as where we're headed in the FY 22-23 year. You'll see that, stating the obvious here, but COVID-19 has played a major role over the last 2 years in relation to the economy and employment, not to mention a host of other impacts that COVID has had. So that goes without saying. But what we can say is that unemployment has gone down greatly. We certainly know that in the spring of 2020, unemployment was at an all-time high of 17.4%, and it's gone down to just over 5% as of the end of September 2021. We'll also note that personal income is projected to increase from 2022 to 2024, and this information is based on the Rhode Island Revenue Estimating Conference memorandum dated November 18th, 2021. I know this slide is difficult to read, but essentially this substantiates the previous slide, the message being a continued drop in state unemployment rates and increase in personal income. As we move on to our South Kingstown's economic outlook, despite the pandemic, our unemployment at this point is at 3.5% as of the end of September. We know the real estate market remains very strong, in South Kingstown. We also know that that's in part due to the pandemic. The town is currently going through a full revaluation to be completed at year end, and assessments are expected to increase. We'll also note that our municipal retirement programs are all funded at 75% or higher, and our OPEB trust, that's other post-employment benefits, is fully funded. And our municipal unassigned fund balance is at approximately $15.7 million, a healthy balance for the town. As we look at this slide, we can see the unemployment rate. It only goes as far as 2020. You'll see that at this slide reflects a 6.9% rate. Again, we're down at about 3.5% currently, and you'll notice that it drops in 2020 on the slide below, unemployed and unemployed workers. Just as a frame of reference for the housing market and market value of homes in South Kingstown, this information was pulled from Zillow, and it's showing a spike in our overall market rates for residential housing in South Kingstown, with the average at $551,376. Again, that's the average market value of residential. That's not assessed value. And we have the property tax maximum levy. As we look at this, and as I referenced before, municipalities cannot increase property tax in excess of 4%. And what this slide details is, you'll see our first column in FY 2021, the property tax levy was $76,422,435. If we were to go to the maximum tax levy in the current year, FY 21-22, at 4%, we would have had a property tax levy of $79.4 million. What we certified as the tax levy for the current year is $76.6 million. So it's really to give you a sense of what the town could do if it were to go to the maximum 4% tax levy. You'll notice that the property tax rate has remained at $14.45 for FY 2021 and FY 2022. And we have a 5-year property tax levy history. This gives you a look back at how the tax levy was calculated back to 2017, 2018, up until 21-22. Over the 5 years, there was an increase of 2.13% total. It is broken out by town and school, so you can see how the allocations were made over the past 5 years. And then in the slide below, you'll see the total tax rate. Again, 2019, 2020 through 21, 22, the tax rate has remained the same at $14.45 per thousand. Oop, all right, keep skipping ahead here. We talked about revaluation and that we're currently going through the revaluation process. This is an example of what it would look like FY 2022. Right now, we have a certified assessed real and tangible property value of $5.1 billion, and our tax levy is at $74 million. That doesn't include motor vehicles, for our rate of $14.45. If in FY 22 assessed property values increased by 40%, we would be looking at a $7.1 billion value in real and tangible property. If we maintained the same property, the tax levy in FY22 at $74 million, the same as it is this year, the tax rate would drop to $10.32 per thousand to be in compliance with the state law to not raise the tax by more than 4%. So for a taxpayer, an example is if your assessed property value is $400,000, the tax due would be $5,780 at $14.45 per thousand. In FY22, your assessed property value increased by 40% would be $560,000. And again, if all things were being equal in terms of the tax levy, the tax due would be the same, $5,780. It would be $560 times $10.32. So there will be we do expect a change in the overall assessment of home values, which would then reflect a change in the property tax. We'll get into a little bit more into the presentation. Zach has also provided us with some financial data for Washington County. This gives us a bit of a comparison. Again, it is difficult to read on the monitor, but essentially it allows you to see where South Kingstown falls in relation to Narragansett, North Kingstown, Westerly, and Charlestown. And you can see residential property taxes for South Kingstown again are at $14.45, and across the board they vary. Narragansett is $10.48. Of course, services are different across these communities as well. Bear that in mind. North Kingstown is $17.09, Westerly $11.31, and Charlestown is $8.23. And you can see the total tax levy for each town as well. Jumping ahead. But it gives you some frame of reference for our neighboring communities and what their rates are compared to South Kingstown. Again, this is a little more detail on Washington County, South Kingstown compared to our neighbors, and depending on the population, the data varies. Zach, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or if it's pretty self-explanatory.
So if you want to read this, you can also see it in the proposed capital improvement plan that's been put out at this. It's in a more readable format, the slide that you're looking at. Most of this data is all compiled just for comparison purposes. South Kingstown is in line with we think, with its peers, and it shows that we have I think, overall strong, healthy financial outlook. And using this in preparing the FY23 budget will help us as we move forward, and we hope it gives you the information that you need in trying to make decisions that may come up and wondering what other communities are doing in Washington County.
Thank you. What we have here is a 5-year comparison of the property tax levy and expenditures. So you will see in the first column of 2016-17 basically the property tax information. There was a $69.4 million tax levy, and if you look at where we are in 21-22, we're at $76.4 million. And over the course of that 5-year time frame, the average 5-year average annual increase was $1.3 million, or 1.92%. So it gives you an idea of how the town is doing in terms of year over year and also longer term. We also will show you the municipal expenditure program in relation to the major programs, so that the town side, the school fund transfer, the capital budget, school debt, and town debt service as it looks in 2016-17, and where it is in 21-22. So you can compare these. And again, it reflects a relatively modest increase over a 5-year term when you look at the totals, and the general fund cost over that 5-year term shows an increase of 2.4%. Of course, we do require bonding in order to fund our major infrastructure improvements, and currently we have our future bonding scale schedule on this slide, which reflects the municipal bond, $6.5 million municipal bond, which the referendum date was in November 2020, and the Town Council recently authorized that bond to be initiated. And we show a total of $7.5 million in FY 21-22 in the bond schedule. That does include a $1 million bond also for the neighborhood guild improvements, which was voted on in November of 2006. What we also call out here in future years are anticipated school building improvements in 2 phases. We realize that there will be school improvements on the horizon, and so we thought it prudent to leave this in the budget in terms of knowing what's on the horizon for the school program, which shows a total of $86,160,000 for all bonding over the course of the next 4 or 5 years. This slide represents the town's debt service as a percentage of operating revenues. So you can see that the blue bar represents our gross debt service as a percentage of the general fund. And you'll see in 21-22, it's just under 2%. We will have some bonds sold in 21-22, and you'll see that that would bump us up to 2.26%. And then in the outer years, you'll see a spike. Again, that reflects anticipated school facility bonding. Again, I know this is a difficult slide to see, but this slide basically lays out all future debt service cost schedules for the next 6 years. Again, this is part of looking at the capital improvement program, and what's here shows the projects that are bond funded and what it would look like over the course of the next 6 years in terms of what the town would have in debt service. And we have our municipal pro forma budget. We can, and again, this is based on all things being equal, with really just our, we know we have contractual obligations to fulfill, the property tax fees from 22, which are $77,280,801. Looking at a pro forma in 2023 at $79.5 million. We're looking at most of these staying level because we don't have our departmental budgets in. We will be waiting for, obviously, all of our departments to submit their budgets and their needs to really be able to reflect what 22-23 will look like in financial terms. But for the sake of discussion this evening, we've laid out the numbers as you see them here with that anticipated property tax increase for 2023 over 2022. All of the other lines remain relatively flat in those terms. Zach, do you want to give a little bit more detail? I know you have.
So we've kept out, if you look at state aid, we've held at what was adopted last year. We don't know, the state has not issued any projected numbers yet. Those will be coming out in the next couple of months as we get deeper into the budget season. I have asked the Division of Municipal Finance if when they would be releasing it. They're not there yet. We'd have to wait. We're also going to be waiting to see what the governor's office will be doing in terms of what they propose for proposed state aid to cities and towns. The departmental and the license fees, we only projected out at about a 1% increase for the pro forma tonight. Again, as departments go through their budgets, look at their revenue line items, and these numbers will change between what you see tonight and what will be presented to you in the coming months as the budget season develops. Again, right now we're looking at investment income that could change. We're in an interesting time right now, but we'll take a more macro view of the town and of the national. In the operating transfers, we have held right now in that includes transfers to outside funds, including the school department, and we have kept that level for discussion purposes tonight to what was the property tax transfer that was provided adopted in fiscal 22. And then we've used fund balance to round out the overall revenues. The revenue you see tonight for the pro forma is about a 4% increase overall. We will, again, as we bring these numbers into focus, that'll drive. We'll also begin to know when we start to see the departmental budgets what the true need for the town is, and you'll see in the upcoming slides that there will be some expenditure considerations that we're going to take into account as we develop the budget and just determine what stays in, what may have to go, and what ultimately will be presented to you. And then again, you have the opportunity to have us go back and redo things if there's things that you would like to see changed or reanalyzed. We're available for that too.
So we can give you a little bit of information on considerations, both economic and social, for this year's municipal budget deliberations. First, just as a frame of reference, our property tax roll history is reflected here from 2013 up to 2022, and it's about $5.1 billion in property tax value. Some of the considerations that we're reviewing now are maintaining existing level services. So in terms of what the town provides in public service, from public services, snow plowing, recreation, senior services, general governmental services, EMS, we're looking at maintaining all of those existing service levels. We do have contractual obligations to fulfill for NEA, Council 94, and IAFF. We know what those are. We're in the second year of those agreements, and so those calculations obviously will be added into the budget. We do have one other. The IBPO contract expires on June 30th, 2022, so that also has to be taken into consideration as we consider personnel and benefits in the FY 22-23 budget. Emergency Services Department, as the council is aware, there has been discussion with regard to the need for a third ambulance operating 24/7. That's the equivalent of 8 paramedics, salary and benefits at approximately $700,000. That is something that is also, will be proposed in terms of the upcoming budget. We also have obligations in terms of employee benefits. We anticipate for healthcare premiums to increase somewhere between 6 to 9%, with an estimated increase of $200,000, and pension contribution increases as well, estimated at about $162,000. In terms of the capital budget, you have the capital budget, the council does, for review, but What this table shows is just a comparison from the adopted 21-22, both the long-term budget in 21-22 with a total 6-year program of $114.4 million. The projected or proposed 22-23 capital long-term budget is $121.4 million, with bonding incorporated into that calculation. So that's a cost change of about almost $7 million from the 21-22 long-term capital program to the 22-23 capital program. At this time, we can certainly answer questions unless you'd like to hear from the school department next.
Thank you, Terry. Questions from the council? Any questions from school committee at this point? Just one question from me. I know we typically like to keep the increase in the, budget below, the rate of inflation. We've seen inflation jump this year, where it is today, maybe 6 or 7%. Is inflation impacting costs that we're seeing at the municipal level?
So yes, right now in this exact moment, we're in a moment of hyperinflation, and we are waiting as we analyze. We're doing some analysis on different commodities, gasoline, heating oil, things of that nature, propane, and we're putting those numbers together and trying to determine how much of a estimate or a reserve contingency to build into the inflation contingency to build into the budget. We've talked with our fiscal advisor also on what they're hearing, and again, it's too early to tell how much we should build into it, but at some point in this budget there will be we think some inflation protection, because there are we are seeing in the near term commodities that will be increasing. So what that number is going to look like, it's kind of a wait and see right now. We don't want to be over, and then it seems to correct itself. I wish I had that crystal ball and could tell you, but I don't have that answer right now. But as time goes on, things will change, and as we do that, we'll continue to update. But I would be safe to say that there will be some sort of inflation protection. We're going to try to build something into this so that we're not in a position where we're losing purchasing power from the town's perspective, just like a regular individual who will be losing purchasing power potentially. The town could potentially lose their purchasing power when we go out to buy goods and services. So we're trying to make sure that we can continue to offer the services without too much interruption. But again, it's too early. I would tell you we're not going to build an additional 6% into the budget because inflation is there. We're going to look at it historically and then work with the fiscal advisor to see what would be a good compromise.
So.
Any real numbers on healthcare increases?
So from the trust right now is giving estimates of about 6 to 9%. If you remember last budget season, we started about this time we were right around the same estimate, and when we got down to the April time frame, we were at about a 2.8% increase. It's because there was good activity in the pool overall. So we're hoping that we see that again, and that they're just being very conservative right now when we're asking them, and we know we can't pin them down. So we'll probably, in the initial budget that you'll see, we'll probably be around, unless something changes, we'll probably present something around a 7.5% increase, and then if that comes down and we recognize something better, we will reduce it, and then that will allow us to reallocate. Dental's right now in the 4 to 6% estimate. Last year, we ended up being a 0% increase, when they certified the increases from the trust. So, again, it's very early. They're giving very high estimates, but I think they want to protect themselves at the same time. I hope we have good experiences in the pool, and that will allow chances for those rates or those potential increases to come down, and we'll update accordingly.
All right, seeing no further questions, would the schools like to make their presentation?
They're just going to take a moment to connect to the monitor.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Town Council and the School Committee and the Town Manager. Our presentation this evening will focus on the School Committee and the school district's work to create a comprehensive plan that is transparent and that addresses three major areas. And I'm going to provide for you the process that we followed, and Raquel will provide for you the fiscal overview. The first slide represents the areas that are being addressed by the school committee and the school district, which is curriculum, school buildings, and budget. Next slide is just a schematic of how it works in terms of the four committees feeding into the objectives that the school committee has established. Next one. To address the three areas of curriculum, school buildings, and budget, the school committee on October 12, 2021 voted to approve the creation of 4 subcommittees as a strategy to achieve the objective of creating a comprehensive plan for the school district. And there you see on the screen the 4 objectives that were established by each of the subcommittees. For the people at home, I'll read those. The Strategic Planning Subcommittee is in partnership with the educational community to create a 5-year strategic plan that ensures student readiness and success in college and/or career. The Budget Subcommittee developed a budget or will develop a budget that supports teaching and learning while maintaining fiscal austerity. The Redistricting Committee would create a plan that provides a minimum of 2 or 3 options to redesign the grade structure educational programs, and building utilization. And the goal of the building subcommittee is to assess the infrastructure of each school building relative to educational programs, space, and costs of projected improvements. The next slide represents the 4 goals that the school committee voted on for the fiscal year 22-23. First goal is to restructure, redistrict, or reconfigure the school district. Second goal was to create a budget that supports teaching and learning while maintaining fiscal austerity. The third goal speaks to strategically developing a pre-K to 12 curriculum that meets state and national standards. And the fourth goal is to work with the educational facilities planner to create a district plan that meets the requirements of the RIDE necessity of construction application, stages 1 and 2. To form the subcommittees, the school committee engaged in the following process. The school committee solicited the community to serve on one of the 4 subcommittees: strategic planning, redistricting, building, and budget. On October 26th, at a public meeting, the school committee interviewed 16 applicants. 8 applicants were appointed. 2 community members were selected to serve on each subcommittee. And as you can see from the 4 subcommittees, they have a total of 43 members, and you can see the breakout there on your screen with each committee. Next slide just represents our current school enrollment by grade and by school. The number currently is 2,587 students in the district. Next slide represents the historical enrollment over the last 10 years for the North Kingstown School District. You can see in 2011 enrollment was at 3,350, and in 2021 the enrollment is 2,563, which is an approximately 23% decline in population, student population. The next slide, you took the 2,563 students and you look at the projected enrollment for the next 10 years, the enrollment drops to 2,182, or approximately a 15% decline. The next slide just represents the historical and the projected enrollment in graph form, and you can see the projection in enrollment over the last 10 years and moving forward over the next 10 years. The next slide represents what I'd like to do at this point is bring you up to date regarding the work of each of the subcommittees. The school committee had 3 public hearings, December 7th, 14th, and 16th. They also had public comments at each meeting, and they also received emails from the community. I'm going to engage now in the process to explain the subcommittee reports up to date. First subcommittee to report on is the Budget Subcommittee. The Budget Subcommittee discussed areas of concern within the development of the FY 22-23 projected budget, state and federal mandates, and other contractual issues. The subcommittee reviewed district policies and best practices for budgeting, procedures for use of fund balance, and procedures for a systematic approach for closing a school. I would just like to review some important information regarding the closing of a school. Some of the issues that really need to be considered. Needs to be a discussion with the town and the school committee. Needs to be a discussion with the school building authority and RIDE on the closure of a school. What would be additional one-time costs for the closure? Staff impact, instructional and program impact, projected maintenance and technology potential savings, projected transportation cost or savings, identifying inventory, relocation of supplies and materials, terminate contracts with vendors, identify student placements and notifications to parents, and complete any outstanding work orders. There are many more other considerations. These are just some of the important ones. Timing of closing a school is critical to the success of closing a school. The next subcommittee is the Building Subcommittee. The Building Subcommittee discussed its charge to assess the current conditions of the school district's facilities and determine current and future needs for improvement to serve the current and future student body. The subcommittee toured the high school and 3 elementary schools. They also visited the newly built East Providence High School and the newly renovated Lincoln High School. The Building Subcommittee, along with the 3 other subcommittees, will work with the Educational Facilities Master Planner to develop a plan that best meets the needs of the district's students. The Strategic Planning Committee. This subcommittee established the following priorities: equity, diversity, and access to opportunities, excellence in teaching and learning, and engaged in informed decision-making with all stakeholders. The Strategic Planning Subcommittee will also have components of each school's school improvement plan. This will create a common thread between the schools and the district's strategic plan. The goal of the subcommittee is to have direction for the next 3 to 5 years that allows alignment with academic student support and budgetary priorities. The Redistricting Subcommittee. The subcommittee set goals for redistricting. Those goals are students first, equity and diversity across elementary schools, efficient use of facilities embedded in facts and data. The subcommittee brainstormed 14 various school configurations and settled on 2 options. Please note that the following options are over a 2- and 3-year period. Option A, in the 22-23 school year, currently Wakefield's grade structure is pre-K to 4. The recommendation for 22-23, keep 3 pre-K classrooms at Wakefield. Keeping Wakefield open is in anticipation of mandated or universal pre-K. Relocate grades 1 through 4 at Peasdale, West Kingston, and Matunic. Curtis Corner and Broad Rock would remain the same grade structure. In fiscal year 23-24, close Curtis Corner, relocate grades 7 and 8 to Broad Rock, and create a 6-7-8 grade structure at Broad Rock. Relocate grade 5 at Broad Rock to Peasdale, West Kingston, and Matunic, thus creating a K-5 grade structure. Keep pre-K at Wakefield to remain open. In fiscal year 24-25, close Curtis Corner and Wakefield. Keep Broad Rock 6-7-8. Keep Peasdale, West Kingston, and Matunic K-5. And with the closing of Wakefield, move the pre-K program to the high school. Option B, close Wakefield in 22-23, relocate children pre-K to 1 to Peasdale, grades 2 to 4 to West Kingston and Matunic. Keep same grade structure at Curtis Corner and Broad Rock. In fiscal year 23-24, close Wakefield, Curtis Corner. Pre-K to 1 to Peasdale, grade 2 to 5 to West Kingstown and Matunic, and Broad Rock would become 6, 7, 8. The context of both of these options are over a 2- and 3-year period. The objective is to create a multi-year plan to efficiently address program needs, staffing, transportation, community and parent notification regarding the closing of a school. The subcommittee work is an internal process to help formulate the FY 22-23 budget and to provide information to the consultant in support of the RIDE necessity of construction application, stages 1 and 2. Moving forward, the consultant is scheduled to visit each school the week of January 3rd through the 7th. They will review options A and B along with information gathered at each school and provide the school committee with any additional recommendations or options. And we are projecting at this point that school committee, everything falling into place, we'll have a special meeting on January 11th to receive the input from the consultant regarding options A or B or any variation of option A or B. And also on January 18th, the school committee will have another special meeting to discuss and possibly take action relative to a redistricting plan. So that's the process that we have engaged in to this point. And now I'll turn it over to Raquel to speak about the fiscal overview.
So I just want to review what the requirements are under Rhode Island general law for a pre-budget consultation. The school committee has to provide the town with a statement of anticipated expenses, projected enrollment that we just went over, staffing and facility requirements, estimated enrollments and payments to charter schools, and any necessary or mandated changes in school programs and operations. Next slide. Rhode Island Department of Education recently released very preliminary state aid figures. They're required to do this for planning purposes under Rhode Island general law. If we look back at last year at the same time when Rhode Island Department of Education released the planning or preliminary state aid, what they did is used the enrollment and free and reduced lunch figures for March 2020, in essence holding school districts harmless for any change in enrollment and free and reduced lunch. This year, when Rhode Island Department of Education released the figures, they actually reduced the enrollment down to what it is as of this year on October 1. So when you're looking at that, the change would be from March 2020 to October 1 of the current year. It is a significant reduction across the board for all school districts in Rhode Island. They also released actually two scenarios, one with a change in free and reduced lunch and one with keeping that, holding that, just that harmless. The reductions in state aid across the state, what that would mean for South Kingstown is anywhere from a reduction of about 800,000 to about 900,000. What that would mean for Providence is anywhere from a reduction of $21 million to $28 million. So RIDE released a statement saying that there is a significant loss in enrollment. Based on that, there's a significant loss in state aid. That there are several proposals out there to mitigate the potential loss, which would need legislative actions. So we do want you to know that it's very preliminary. We do expect it to get much better, especially with Providence losing that sort of a significant loss of state aid. We will keep the town updated as well as school committee as soon as we hear anything from RIDE. When we go to the expenditure side, now that we're looking at what state aid looks like and we're using the baseline of 0 increase from the town, we're jumping now to the expenditure side. When we look at the expenditure side, of course, we are a service organization. Our biggest driver is employee benefits and salaries. We have our certified staff has a 2% increase. Looking at increases in step class and the 2%, we're looking at about an increase of about $610,000. We are currently, or will begin, negotiations with our non-certified staff, so at this point it's TBD. We also have the requirement with under Article 9 for maintaining our buildings. Right now, the current 22 budget, we're at 2.5% of the total budget. Next year we'll go to the maximum, which is 3%. We're also looking at our contracted services with special education. That is another area where we have to meet maintenance of effort. We're looking at anywhere between a 3 to 5% increase in our out-of-district services and tuitions. That's about a $416,000 increase. Also, we have our current contract with transportation. That would be a 4% increase next year. That's about $178,000. We're looking now at our annual service agreements and our utilities. That's TBD at this point. We also know that our retirement costs for all our employees are increasing slightly, 41% for non-certified and 26% for our certified staff. Overall, that's a little under $100,000 increase. As Zach said before, we got preliminary information from Rhode Island Interlocal Trust for our health premiums, anywhere between 6 to 9%. If the town and the schools will stay constant in what our projections are, right now we would be using 7.5%, and that's about $362,000. Our other concern is our capital, what that looks like and how we're going to fund it. So right now, those are TBD as well. Next slide. Just to recap, this is our last year of the transition for a certain percentage of the general operational budget to be spent on maintaining our buildings. We're at the 3% from 2023 and beyond. We're also seeing an increase in tuition costs for vocational and CTE in state schools. Right now we have a total of 101 students going to vocational schools. We have about 8 going to our state-operated MET school and 106 going to our charter schools. Rhode Island Department of Education hasn't released the new rates for tuition cost, so these are based on the current rates that we have right now. Now we're looking at the pro forma. When we're looking at the revenue, what we're using for our baseline to begin the budgeting process is a 0% increase from the town. We're using worst case scenario, that is if Rhode Island Department of Education decides to move forward with the reduction of enrollment, which is about 226 students, and also the reduction or the change in free and reduced lunch. We're leveling high-cost special education in group homes. We're also leveling or slightly increasing our local revenue, and our use of fund balance is TBD. So as we begin the process, this is the revenue that we're looking at right now. I'm going to turn this over to Gina, who's going to talk about mandated programs.
As Raquel mentioned, part of our responsibility as the school department is to report out on any necessary or mandated changes in school programs. One mandate, which is unfunded, is the Right to Read Act. And what that requires LEAs to do is to make sure that we have all of our elementary teachers or a teacher holding a K-12 certification, could be a reading teacher or a special educator, demonstrate proficiency in the science of reading and structured literacy. We have 35 teachers currently completing their training, and we still have 87 teachers left that need to engage in this training. And here is the cost for the vendor and then also to cover the substitute pay. So this is, again, unfunded mandate, funding stream not identified at this moment. Another mandate that we are required to meet by 2023, June 2023, is what's known as the Curriculum Act, and that states that for math and English and language arts, we must have what RIDE designates as a high-quality curriculum instructional resource. We were awarded a grant last year that gave us a huge head start of $349,000 that allowed us to procure our K-5 McGraw-Hill resource, and also supported with some purchasing of reading diagnostics and some professional learning for our teachers. Given that, we do need to procure ELA resources for 6 through 8, and teachers would engage in the same process our elementary educators did, where they would go through vetted resources and aligned with certain criteria and select the resource that best meets the needs of our students here. So in that 22-23 cost for ELA, that actually includes K through 12, which would be the new resources for 6 through 8, and the replenishments and digital access for elementary and our high school. The same is for math. Currently, we do have a high-quality math resource, K-5. Up next for our process would be 6 through high school to actually procure a high-quality resource for math, and that total includes K-12. And just want to flag that this will also be the case for science and technology by 2025.
And the last slide is just next steps. I mentioned this to you already. These are tentative dates that have been set up to try to move the decision forward relative to redistricting and reconfiguration for the school district. But just please keep in mind it's a program that spans over 2 or 3 years. It's not just a one-year program. Thank you.
Thank you. So, any questions from council members? School committee, imagine you guys have already seen this. Regarding options A and B, did you say both were predicated on the introduction of universal pre-K?
That was part of the discussion in redistricting, the redistricting subcommittee. Keep that available. If it was mandated, we would have the space to put the program.
So if that mandate doesn't come along, does that change this plan?
Want me to answer that, or you want me to answer that?
So we're working with the planner that we just hired. As we were developing this, it looked like we were going to get the Build Back Better plan, and obviously now we have new information. So there could be some tweaks to both plans on that, although in Plan B, pre-K to 1 pretty much fill up Peacedale schools, so there wouldn't really be any need for tweaking Plan B at all. A being just pre-K at Wakefield, we may be looking at that, maybe a K pre-K instead, but I think we're waiting for more information once we have the facility plan. And that's part of the reason why we're not voting until January, to give them a time to get in our buildings and look at them.
So regardless of a universal pre-K program mandate, I feel that South Kingstown is sorely lacking a robust preschool program, public preschool program for families. Is that something that you'll be pushing? It seems that option A would leave a lot of available classroom space to grow a pre-K program that could offer full day for families who need full day. that could offer wraparound services in the same building. Is that something that you would push with option A, or is it something that you would push with both options?
So we are projecting an increase of another classroom next year, so some expansion with the program. And I wish Charity was here because she probably could talk more about that, because that's where she's working. So we are planning for some expansion even as soon as next year.
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to recognize and thank the school committee and the administration for your hard work on the 4 subcommittees. I know you presented it in a very neat bundle, but I know it represents hours of work on all of your parts, and as well as your parts to really present that to the community. I applaud that you've had already 3 public meetings, and that I came in here thinking that the vote was possibly going to be tomorrow, and I appreciate that you're all going to take some more time and have the educational planner come and really provide you with more information, have another meeting so that the public who may be distracted by Omicron, who may be distracted by the holidays, to really dig their teeth into this project, because it's not an easy decision, and it's definitely going to make some long-term changes. And I just want to applaud you for being very open, transparent, very communicative to the community, seeking that out as much as possible. And I know it also is very compressed. This is all done in, since October 12th till now, so in 8 weeks. And I did have a chance to read some of the report outs, and I felt like they were very thoughtful and grounded and deep in their writing and based in facts. And so I applaud all of your work, and I just want to recognize that. We might not have another chance before you make that vote, but I recognize your hard work. Thank you.
Any other questions from council or comments? All right. Questions from the school committee then.
So my question is actually for I don't know if it's for Zach or Terry or your group, but so we have this consultant that we're going to be hopefully working with, and that's my question. So I kind of jotted down, can we count on the PAYGO money that was reimbursed by the state to be reallocated to us in order to do what we need to do in order to bring on the consultant and know that we can pay for said consultant in order to move forward with the resource? I'm not sure who answers that question, but we'd sleep a little better at night knowing that we actually can pay for the service.
I'll take a stab at that. So preliminary, I'd say yes, we can use the necessity of the school funds account that we have on the town side but I'd like to talk to Raquel a little bit more about it, and potentially if we're using the PAYGO money, just circle back with the school building authority and RIDE just to make sure everything is appropriate before we'd ask for that commitment on the town side. So if you can just give us some time to go through that. I don't see any obstacles, but I think before I commit to a firm yes, that we'd present it to the council.
It's just helpful to know that we would have the support that we would, in order for us to do this, we need to be able to fund it. So thank you.
Other questions from school committee?
And this may be something that we wouldn't know on the spot, and I can certainly look at it myself, but I'm curious, when we were comparing the districts, and when Terry was talking, and we show that the school appropriation is usually 75% of our overall tax. I've been asked multiple times by different people, and I haven't had the answer off the top of my head, but do we know if that's like a normal amount that most towns in the state of Rhode Island or in, throughout, is that typical that 75% of most tax rolls go to schools, or are we on the high side, are we on the low side, are we right down the middle, or do we not know that information?
Off the top of my head, I think we would be in line with some of the other suburban districts across the state, but we'd have to go back and look at that. But historically, we've been about, which is why we put that breakdown in we've been about that 75-25 mix. I think you'd see that in many of the other suburban communities.
Just a quick question to go back to Kate's question about the PAYGO money. Is that something that the town council approves, or is that just done by the finance teams?
So the money we submitted a request for that, or on behalf of the school district. That money then goes through the school. It goes through the school necessity for school construction account, which was designed at the school department. So all the security improvements that went through, everything that was related to the previous project, would go through the school committee authority. The town oversees as a fiduciary of that account. So before we would act, we would make sure that everything was in line, and we would inform the council of what would be taking place. I don't believe we need a formal approval for the expenditure, similar to like the security projects that took place last year and were completed. That all went through the school committee and was approved by them. The town was the fiduciary, so the purchase orders, everything had to go through the school committee approval, the minutes. We wouldn't move on anything until we had all the appropriate documentation and to make sure that, before we release any funding. And again, we would report back to the council and update you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just commend the school committee and the administration for the presentation here. Very informative, very good, very transparent. We appreciate that. Sets a good tone for the working environment to go forward this budget season. But can we get access to these slides? Is that possible? Can you send that over to us when you get a chance? It'd be helpful for us. Thank you.
See any other questions or comments? All right. Well, I see that there are a number of people who have stuck with us tonight. So if anybody would like to make a comment or has a question following these presentations, please come up to the podium. Make sure you're speaking directly into the microphone so people can hear you. And first come, first serve. 5-minute time limit, just so everybody knows.
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. I've always been pretty good about the 5 minutes, Abel.
I'm just saying it for everybody.
I know. Just a few questions, and hopefully this can go pretty quickly. Current year, what is our FTE number? 450, 460, what do you have for a number?
I believe last we had looked at it, including grants funded as well as general fund. We were between 449 and 450. That includes open positions as well.
Okay, thank you. We talked about 101 vocational and 8 met. Can you give me a cost that, I don't know if Mr. Saul writes out the checks quarterly, but Charahoe, Narragansett, can I have some numbers of how many of our South Kingstown residents in those schools?
Yes, so I believe Rhode Island Department of Education hasn't released next year's tuition rates. They're all found on RIDE's website. I believe if it's just local only, it's about 16,000. So that would be a state school. You would only have the local appropriation, meaning the enrollment isn't factored into residential average daily membership. With the vocational and the charter, it's about $18,000, and that would be local and state appropriation.
Right, yeah, and that's a non-poverty. Poverty one's about 5.
Right, and then there is, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But can you give me enrollment in Narragansett and Charahoe?
It's on. You don't have
I assume they're most, except for the Met School, I assume they're the 101 vocational.
So Narragansett right now would be, the enrollment is 56 students. North Kingstown Voc is 9. Charahoe is 36. We have 8 at the Met School. For charter schools, 45 at Kingston Hill, 59 at the Compass School, and 2 at the Green School.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Just a couple of comments. I've been at this for a very long time now, but very hard to digest whether you're in business or just trying to survive out there today. But 60% of capacity, our seating capacity, really, I've got to tell you, rings alarm systems. And why we have gone on and on. And I can just, I sat here with Dr. Hicks back in 2009-10, population 3,700, we're closing next year. That year came along with 36 and a quarter, we're going to close it, never happened. Next year, 35, 34. That's a total of about $8 million it's cost the taxpayers by not following through on what he said he could have done, various plans that he put forward. $8 million at $700,000 a year we thought the savings would be. That's really pretty cruel to taxpayers. A couple other things here. The funding formula, I can't figure out. I wish the state would start all over again. You wouldn't treat your own children if you gave them an extra dime for an allowance and then take it back next week. That'd be kind of difficult. You have to admit your mistake. But we were at $10.6 million back in 2010, our highest that we got from the state. 10.6 million. Where are we now? 4.9, and we're talking about losing hundreds of thousands of more money. But on top of that, what we don't realize and what our House and Senate people should fight for, all the new money, which was always 3-4% that the state gave to education ride, $800 million, $1 billion, $1.2 billion over these 10 years. We got none of that. So this was the double hit they took. And they rightly took, because we had, from 2000, when we opened Broad Rock, our population dropped 10% from 4,400 to under 4,000, and our FTEs went up almost 20% from 519 to 621.2. And I know these numbers. I've lived with them daily since I was on the council. But something's wrong with how the state works this funding formula, terribly wrong. And I wish there was a formula that we could figure out what to do. But I'm sure we can attack here. When I see Wesley, and I'll finish this, Wesley's over $8 million, Barrington $6.5 million, North Kingstown $11 million, Newport, which is very wealthy now, but you wouldn't realize it, $14 million, Cumberland, the governor's home, $20 million. And we're 4.9 and fighting. I don't understand it. We're just not doing something right here. I wish we could put a commission together, but we need some public participation here who maybe understands demographics and finances better than I do. But this is, we're really being screwed, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Sure.
Mr. O'Neill, this is not a complete answer to your question, but I would like to bring up again my mantra. When the funding formula was designed, transportation was not taken into consideration in the funding formula, and being as we are kind of neck and neck with Coventry for the largest landmass and the most number of miles of drivable roads, we have a transportation budget of $4.6 something. Is it $4.9 million? I can remember a couple of years ago being at a meeting with statewide school committee members, and I was talking with school committee members from other districts who had been on school committees for a number of years, and they knew I was new, relatively new at the time, and I said something about our transportation budget being in excess of $4 million, and they said, "Oh, Michelle, you must have that wrong. You must be thinking 400,000." And I said, "No, $4 million in a transportation budget." And that's just not taken into consideration in the funding formula. I've had this discussion multiple times with multiple state reps and senators, because transportation is mandated by state law, but it's not taken into consideration in the funding formula. That would not solve all our problems, but it certainly would help.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doral Beasley. I live in Kingston. So, since the last time we closed a school in this town was in June of 2006. That was South Road School. Since that time, we've lost 1,740 more students out our doors. It breaks down to about 680 maybe or so from pre-K through 4, and then about 500 and change from 5 to 8, and then the high school. That's a boatload of kids. The projection, the NESDEC projection that the district has received, if it holds true, by the end of this decade, it'll mean that in 3 decades, since the year 2000, this town will have lost 48% of its public school students. Now, I've asked this question. It's kind of a rhetorical question. I've asked it here before, and the question is that acceptable? Now, you heard tonight about how parents have decided that to take their children and put them in other schools. We now have, in just the last 4 years, the amount of money that leaves this district to pay for those children to go to other schools has increased from 3 to 5% of our total budget. It's over $3.7 million, I think, this year. 5% of our total budget leaves this district. The only way, this doesn't happen in Barrington and East Greenwich. It doesn't happen into the best school districts in Massachusetts or in Connecticut. But it's happening here. You know, this is South Kingstown, the home of the State University, the last community hospital in Rhode Island. This town has got incredible attributes that should be bringing students to our schools. But 1 out of every 6 students that live in this town now go to other schools. We need to bring those students back if possible. There's only 2 ways to do it, as far as I can see. One is if we can have the guts to build a new high school, that would go a long way towards it. And the other is that our educators have to really work hard at bringing up our assessment scores. Now, just and as far as our budget goes, we have a budget. This school district's budget is equal to the budgets of, when I looked at this, the same budget level of schools in the rest of the schools in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and then I average out how many students they educate there, they educate 700 more students than we do. On the other end of the spectrum, if I look at schools with the same amount of students in those states, the differential was $17 million. But the average of those states was $47 million for 2,945 students. This was in 2019. We had 2,931 students, and our budget was $64 million, a $17 million difference. All we had, if we just looked 15 miles to our north, think about this. I know East Greenwich is considered one of the wealthiest towns in the state. But one of the problems when we talk about median family income here in this town is this. The calculation includes the students at URI when the Census Bureau takes the students who live on campus in a a school of higher education, and adds them to your town's total number of people. So right now we have like 31,000. I think this 2020 thing just came out, but 6,000 of those, a little over 6,000, are from URI, but they don't have any income. So that's how our median family income gets driven down to where it is. But it's really not the case. The kids count reports that are done for the state, and they're on the RIDE website, Kids Count. You can look on those reports and you'll see this. That South Kingstown's median household income for homes whose have children under the age 18, so basically school children, is $115,000. That puts us like around number 10. I'm closing up. That puts us about number 10 in the state. So we're a fairly wealthy town. But here's the thing. We have the differential this year between our budget and East Greenwich's budget is about 50-some students differential. Our budget's like 65, almost $66 million, and theirs is 43. It works out to about almost $9,000 a student. We cannot kick closing the school can down the road again this year. 1,740 students. We have to close the school this year. And the maintenance of effort thing.
All right.
Okay, last thing. The maintenance of effort thing. In 1998, I've said this before in here in this chamber, in 1998, they added 28 words to a general law that says you don't have to have a level funding, maintenance of effort. You have to have maintenance of effort, but you don't have to have level funding from year to year if your school population is dropping it. And ours has dropped now for 20 years straight. Now, for the last 3 years, we could have, the town council, could have reduced the amount of money transferred to the schools from the taxpayers by 1.8 million 2 years ago 2-point-something million last year, and this year is like this year right now, from the drop in students, a little over 3 million. So total for those 3 years is like $7.7 million. But you decided to keep the tax rate even, so you pat yourselves in the back because we didn't raise the tax rate when actually the tax rate should have dropped. And if it had dropped, then we wouldn't have 460 people working here, and we'd be able to build ourselves our new high school and to fix our schools, because the new high school is going to cost us about $150 million.
Thank you, Darrell. Is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight? All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn or any final comments up at the...
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That brings us to the end of tonight's meeting, and it is 8:34, even better. Have a good night, everyone.
And it's 11:35.